Welcome home. We are WNST. Towson, Baltimore. Baltimore positive. The Orioles are on the road. The Ravens get ready to play some fake football down at the stadium on Friday. And then with all the renovations, go to Black Wing, please. Get me a $20 drink in the Black Wing, someone. Luke Jones will be available to do that. He was invited down to their soiree this week where they spent all of your money on their stadium. Luke is at Baltimore. Luke, you can follow him from Owings Mills to Camden Yards. They allow him access. They do not allow me access, but I still talk about things. I'll be writing a whole lot on Labor Day week about the season and about the Chiefs and the Ravens and the Orioles pennant drive, and all of it will be on the back end of the Maryland Crab Cake Tour and the Maryland Oyster Tour, brought to you by the Maryland Lottery, as well as Jiffy Lube and our friends at Liberty Pure Solutions. I'll have the Gold Rush Sevens doublers. We're going to be doing that on the 23rd. Sneaking up on us. We're only 2 weeks out on our next Fadley's event. I got my Coco shirt on. They're on vacation here this week, getting their air condition fixed. We're back at Coco's on September the 4th to kick off football season. That's a Wednesday. And I will be joined that day by the great Mark Viviano formerly of I've always wanted to say formerly of WBAL too, WJZ, formerly of CNN, formerly of TBS. So there's Mark Viviano will be talking kids in baseball, and undoubtedly Stan Musial and Lou Brock and the St. Louis Cardinals with me, maybe even Vince Coleman, and I don't know. We'll figure it all out. That's September 4th. Luke, big doings in Toronto, man. I have a lot of friends up there. Alan McCallum, our dear friend Alan, is up there. My friend David Richardson, who owns Greenmount Bowl and who's involved with the horse racing. All these pictures show up on Facebook. People are traveling, breaking out their passport, which I know you have one because I've seen you in London, to go up to Toronto. The first news was not good news. I was off yogaing on Tuesday night and Planet Fitnessing right pregame. And then, I got off the mat, and I'm like, what happened here? This Grayson Rodriguez thing, I know you're wildly concerned about this.
You have to be. I mean, this was not a good development for the Baltimore Orioles and their World Series aspirations and their aspirations of making a deep October run. And look, when you're talking about someone who is scratched minutes before the game, that is a major concern. And I'm not just talking about Tuesday night and Tuesday night's loss. Albert Suarez pitched admirably, saving the bullpen and leaving them in a position where they had a chance to win. We'll get to Gregory Soto and some of the pinch hit decisions in the 8th inning. But the big story on Tuesday night is Grayson Rodriguez. When you're talking about what was initially labeled as lat/teres discomfort, but the big word being there, the lat. And if you recall, it was 2 years ago in June of 2022 when Grayson Rodriguez was on the cusp of being called up to the major leagues, and he suffered a grade 2 lat strain in early June. Now, we don't know if this is going to be called a strain. The hope is this was something that he felt and initially right away said, hey, Drew French, other guys in the bullpen, I'm not feeling right.
This would be during warm-up this happened, correct?
Yeah, this literally, he was literally scratched less than 10 minutes prior to first pitch. Now, maybe the Orioles didn't announce it right away, but this was something that happened during his warm-up.
The minute you feel pain, you stop throwing. You don't throw another pitch.
You hope so, but you also have guys who understand that sometimes their team's in a bind, or you have guys who are trying to fight through something, or it's something in some cases, and again, we have no idea.
Well, they're horses. They want to pitch. They want to pitch, right, for sure.
But we don't know those details, and we hope this is not something that's been bothering him a little bit here and there, and he was trying to pitch through it. We have no idea. Brandon Hyde's indications after the game was that he was feeling really good, threw a really good bullpen session in Cleveland over the weekend, which was his side session, and just felt this as he was warming up. But, the initial hope, as Masson even showed a clip, and you could he seemed to mouth the words to Drew French, I don't feel right. And the initial hope was maybe he was under the weather. And obviously you don't like that in the moment. You don't like him missing the start, but that would clearly be a scenario where he'd be fine in a few days, but he's going back to Baltimore. They're going to do imaging. Obviously, they're going to evaluate. But getting back to what I was saying, when he had a grade 2 lat strain 2 years ago, he missed 3 months of game action. He was sidelined in early June. He returned to pitch in 5 minor league games in the month of September. Now, that was a pitching prospect at a point when the Orioles were just turning the corner in their quest to become a competitive team again. So Were they conservative? Were they careful? Yes, absolutely. But even if this is a a grade 1 lat strain, that's generally 2 to 3 weeks. You'd be talking about
A
him
month.
probably
Yeah.
at least a month, and that would be the best case scenario, right? I mean, unless this was so preliminary and they were so diligent and Grayson Rodriguez was so vigilant about saying, hey, I felt a little tiny something in my lat, which for anyone that's, I'm not an anatomy major or anything, but the lat is kind of, towards the shoulder, the shoulder blade, the back, and it's obviously something that, is connected to your limbs, with your shoulder and everything. So it's upper back,
It
upper
gets
right back.
torqued when you're coming through on a rotation.
Yeah,
Obviously,
yeah.
right? Yes.
So again, I don't mean to sound the alarm here, and you're hoping for the best. And I'm not going to sit here and say that it's a 3-month absence like it was two years ago for Grayson Rodriguez. But if you look around at lat injuries for pitchers, any of consequence, they miss a lot of time. I mean, they do. And when I say a lot of time, I don't mean in the same scope of Tommy John surgery or something like that. But when you're talking about the fact that we're approaching mid-August, this is the kind of injury where you miss weeks and sometimes months. So you're talking about a tight window here to return, even if it's a grade 1 lat strain. So I don't need to tell you what ramifications, what consequences this would have on their rotation, as we were just talking for weeks and weeks and weeks leading up to them acquiring Zach Eflin. And
Well, it
then
puts Suarez back in the rotation. At least it
for
did
the
on
time
Tuesday
being,
night, and it will for the time being, right? He'll take the ball 5 days from now, assuming that Rodriguez is not ready to go this weekend.
yeah. And to add, I would say insult to injury, but it's injury to injury. Tuesday also brought the news that Chase McDermott, who I still had some optimism could factor into their plans down the stretch and lending a hand, whether it was, as your number 5 starter, if someone has to miss a start, someone's sick, someone tweaks a hamstring, or in the bullpen, he's been shut down with right scapula, a right stress reaction in his right scapula area. So I would assume that he's probably done for the year with something like that. Or again, we're talking about something that's not a 7-day or a 10-day thing. So even some of your minor league depth that I'm not going to sit here and say Chase McDermott comes up and takes the place of Grayson Rodriguez. That'd be silly, but he is someone that I thought still had a chance to lend a hand down the stretch. So at some point, Nestor, and again, we're going to find out just how serious this is. I would assume Grayson Rodriguez is at a minimum going to go on the IL for the minimum stay, right?
He's going to be shut down.
That to me would be the best case scenario. I mean, think back to in May, when he had the shoulder inflammation, it wasn't called a lat strain, anything like that. So I'm not saying it was related, but he missed 2.5 weeks then. Now he came back and he made every start. I think he'd made 14 starts since then. So it's not as though he, showed any lingering signs there, and he's pitched well this year. And 13 wins and a 3.86 ERA and 10 strikeouts per 9, 2.8 walks. He's had a really, really good season. But I mean, this is a potential gut punch. This is the kind of move, Nestor, that if Grayson Rodriguez, if his availability is in question for the rest of the year, I think it really puts the Orioles behind the Yankees in terms of the pecking order in the AL East.
Tough to win the division and tough to win in October. Yes.
And that's the thing. I mean, to me, the Orioles go from being one of the favorites in the AL to get to the World Series to kind of just another team in that mix. Not at all suggesting that they would completely collapse. Not at all suggesting they wouldn't make the postseason, because you are still only talking about one pitcher who goes every 5 days or every 5 games. But when you're talking about upside, I mean, Grayson Rodriguez, other than Corbin Burns, gives you the most of any pitcher, including Eflin, right? I mean, the idea was those 3 topping your October rotation, and then whether it was Dean Kramer or Trevor Rogers as your 4th, you were going to figure that out. But now, I mean, you take Grayson Rodriguez out of the equation potentially. I mean, that's a devastating blow. I mean, that's really a massive blow. I don't want to say fatal, because he's not Corbin Burns, but he's the guy that can pitch like Corbin Burns quite often when he goes out there. And you need that upside. You need the production that he's already given you, and that upside as far as when you get to October. And so you're hoping for the best. And again, this Not saying he has the same injury that he had 2 years ago, but lat issues are tricky and lat issues are concerning. And the other factor with the lat issue is if it's one of consequence, if it's grade 2 or something like that, it's the kind of thing that you need to give proper rest to, because there have even been pitchers who've had issues and then it can even pour into the following year. So not good. And again, I know some people are going to say, Luke, you're throwing dirt on the Orioles. You're throwing dirt on Grayson Rodriguez right now. It's not a good injury for a pitcher to have. Again,
Well, I mean, let's go back to Bradish. When Bradish happened in January, you were like, that's why they went and got Burns. They don't have Bradish. This is when Rodriguez is a might be, not an is, right? Like, we looked at him and we were like, he's the game 3 starter. Well, let's let him show him pitch for a season. He ain't done that yet.
right.
And he ain't done that yet now. I mean, he's great when he's out there. But so is Bradish. So is Means.
Any pitcher.
Great when they're
any
out there.
pitcher. I mean, it's any pitcher. I mean, pitchers break. I mean,
but
that's
pitchers with 5 ERAs, arms falling off, is different than pitchers with 3 ERAs, falling off. And the guys that are Means, Bradish, certainly Rodriguez moving into the where when you take the ball 5-6 innings every 5th day and you can hold the other team down, that's something not everybody can do. We've been looking for that for 30 years around here, since Messina. And
no question.
Yeah, and your caution and your intellect about this and your expertise and maturity about this, not being a doctor, but we've seen enough pitching injuries to know, like, Rodriguez isn't taking the ball Monday when the Birds get home. Based on that would be just shocking. And I think the Bradish thing, I was a little alarmed with you back in January saying, all right, it's off season, just chill it out a little bit. If it bends, it breaks usually with pitching. I mean, you've given me a couple of examples. The Japanese kid, Tanaka, that came over for the Yankees, had his arm fall off and they held it together. The kid that pitches for the Phillies, Nola, right? I mean, but few and far between. I mean, arm trouble it's death for pitchers, man. Anything that affects that, you cannot pitch at that level at full effort, throwing the ball 95 miles an hour when things hurt at all, even a little bit. I mean,
yeah. Well, and I think, again, the difference here is when you're talking about the UCL, when you're talking about Tommy John surgery, anytime you're talking about a pitcher with a rotator cuff
or an elbow,
I mean, those are obviously much bigger red flags. Look, I am not sitting here sounding the alarm that this means Grayson Rodriguez is definitely done this year or that he's going to miss time next year or anything like that. It's a lat strain, right? I mean, we're not talking about something, unless you have a grade 3 lat strain, it's typically not a surgical requirement, but it takes some time. It takes time to recover. It takes time.
And you don't have time in the middle of August when you're in first
exactly.
place.
I mean, even 2 years ago when he was able to return in the month of September, albeit still pitching in the minors, and the Orioles were going to slow play him at that point in time. That was an early June diagnosis. That was an early June injury. I mean, we're 2 months ahead of that timeline now. So, I mean, if it's a grade 2, I can't see any reason how or any way he's coming back. I mean, maybe there would be a scenario under that where he'd come back and maybe you could use him in the bullpen a little bit, but that would be so again, and I'm trying not to get ahead of myself here. You're hoping that this was so preliminary, such a slight hint of discomfort that they'll do the imaging and they'll say, you know what? We're not even sure if this is really a grade 1 lat strain, but Grayson, we're really glad that you said something. We're really glad that we looked at this. We're going to shut you down until, you're not going to throw for 2 weeks. And then we're going to see how you're feeling. We're going to image it and see what if there's inflammation, all of that at that point. And then we'll build you back up and we'll target a second week of September kind of return, right? I mean, if he can return in a month, then game on, right? I don't know if that means they're going to win the division, but they're still in great shape. They lost on Tuesday night. And again, we haven't even talked about the game, and there's meat on the bone to talk about with the game, but the Yankees were postponed. They've fallen into second place, albeit by just a half game. But they've got some wiggle room here. I mean, even if Grayson Rodriguez, like I said, even if he's out for some time here, I still think this team's still in a great position to make the playoffs. But if you don't have him, if there's questions about his availability the rest of the way, it really changes the complexion of, for me, how far they can go. You know, any scenario for me with this team making a deep run is Corbin Burns, obviously being Corbin Burns, Grayson Rodriguez being the best version of himself, and Zach Eflin pitching more like he did with Tampa Bay a year ago than he has this year. Which, hey, he's been good with his
Well,
first
you
two
got to
starts with
be in
the
the fifth or
Orioles.
sixth inning in
But
those games. Game 1, 2, and 3 with a
you
chance to
do,
win. You have to have a chance to win. It can't be 7-2 in the fifth inning.
and that's where we go into the bullpen. And you can kind of get by. We've seen this. I mean, Cleveland, when they went to the World Series the year they took the Cubs to 7 games, right? You know, they had two starting pitchers that they felt really good about at that point in time, but their bullpen was so locked down and so amazing that they kind of just made it work. The other guy, when they'd start someone else, they were out by the 4th inning, and they just went through it with their bullpen. The Orioles don't have that kind of bullpen, at least on paper right now, especially when one of the two guys that you brought in to make a difference for you, Gregory Soto, has been a disaster so far. I mean, another disastrous outing for him. In his first three appearances with the Orioles, Soto has surrendered 8 earned runs, 9 hits, and 3 walks. He's gotten a total of 4 outs, Nestor. So I
I
mean,
don't know how you give him the ball again. I don't know what scenario, what game
low
you're
leverage.
losing. What game you're losing
Yeah.
if you bring him in.
I mean, that's the thing. And I mean, they sent out Keegan Aiken for him. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, what a terrible move, because I saw the upside that Mike Elias saw, but it's not happening for him right now. And I mean, you were in a position where Birch Smith is pitching and had relieved Albert Suarez, gives up a single. Brandon Hyde goes to Soto. Look, there's been a lot of second guessing of Brandon Hyde at various times
lately on lineups and substitutions. He is under a scrutiny that you don't get under when you win 52 games.
But I think that was a situation again, and I've said this to you before. I'm a Brandon Hyde guy, but that doesn't mean there aren't times where I say, I would have left this pitcher in for one more batter, or I might have pulled this guy a little more quickly than he did in this spot, or I don't know why he felt the need to use a 4th reliever in a game where they're up by 5 runs rather than just sticking with the previous guy and letting him get a couple more outs. But that was a spot where we've seen the Orioles over and over and over, and this is going to transition into the pinch hitting decisions that they made a couple innings later. But we've seen the Orioles over and over and over prefer the platoon advantage. We've seen that with pitchers. We've seen that with the bullpen usage. We've seen that with pinch hitters coming off the bench. We have seen that over and over and over. And I continue to see fans crush Brandon Hyde on that as though that is a move that he's making with full autonomy and acting on his own. It is an organizational philosophy that they want the platoon advantage to the point where we see what happened in the 8th inning, where Austin Slater pinch hits for Jackson Holliday. I didn't love that. However, Jackson Holliday has 1 career hit against left-handers in the major leagues. Austin Slater, who has not, by the way, mind you, has not been good against left-handed pitching this year, which is a big reason why the Orioles got him for nothing. But in his career, and this is why the Orioles wanted him, he's been good against left-handed pitching. So I didn't love that move. I can at least live with that move. And Austin Slater drew a walk, and it kind of worked out. However, you get to a couple batters later, and Colton Cowser, who has been the Orioles' best hitter over the last 2 weeks. Had the hitting streak, all of that.
Well, Holliday hasn't stunk either since they brought him.
Of course. But again,
if you're going with guys who are hitting the ball well and playing well, those are the two guys in the line. They're better than Rutschman lately.
Noted, and that's why I said I didn't love pinch hitting for Holliday. I can accept that at least. We can have moves that we second guess and say, all right, I see where you're coming from there. And he even drew a walk. So it's not like the move failed, even if you didn't like the move, even if you thought
succeeded.
Your process. So, however, when you pinch hit Colton Cowser against a guy who, yes, is a left-hander, but if you look at the splits for the Toronto lefty and his name Cabrera, Genesis Cabrera, you looked at the splits, he did not have dramatically extreme right-handed, left-handed splits as a left-handed pitcher, and you're going to send Kobe Mayo up to the plate who does not yet have a major league hit. Does not mean that I'm burying the guy, does not mean that I'm not really excited about his potential, but you're going to pinch hit Colton Cowser, who also has been good against left-handed pitching of late, much better than he had been. For Kobe Mayo, Nestor, there's no excusing that move. In my mind, that is a bad decision. It's bad process. He was asked about it after the game.
I think he was looking for Mayo to hit a home run or something, right? Like muscle one up, because that's what
Colton Cowser hits home runs.
Right?
Colton Cowser, Colton Cowser, if you look at how this surge he's had over the last 3 weeks, I mean, there are a lot of people that thinks he's in the driver's seat to potentially win Rookie of the Year. That's what kind of player we're talking about here. And I get he's not perfect, but to pinch hit someone who doesn't even have a major league hit yet for Colton Cowser in that spot against a lefty who doesn't have these extreme splits where righties crush him and lefties are helpless. That made my head hurt. That made my head hurt. And, I don't say things like that very often when it comes to second guessing coaches.
See, I watched Mayo come up, and I was hoping for a big moment from him. You know what I mean? Like in my heart,
it's not a movie. It's a baseball game. It's a movie. It's not a movie.
I got that. But he's capable. He's got a bat.
Colton Cowser's capable. Colton Cowser's actually done stuff in the major leagues. That's indefensible for me. I can understand and accept begrudgingly pinch hitting Austin Slater for Jackson Holliday. Kobe Mayo for Colton Cowser in that spot. Nope. Can't do it. I just can't. And I'm a Brandon Hyde guy. I'm not someone that sits here and picks apart every move and basically crushes the guy based on the result and ignoring.
I think it's the first time I've ever heard you chippy with Brandon Hyde.
It's a bad decision. I don't know how you defend that. I just don't know how you defend that. Especially, look, Kobe Mayo is going to be fine. And I think Kobe Mayo could be an all-star corner infielder at some point in his career. I think he's got that kind of potential with the bat, but that doesn't mean you do that on August 6, 2024, when he's yet to record his first major league hit. And he wasn't in the starting lineup even because you're giving him a little bit of a breather and you're still trying to keep Ramon Arias in the mix. So if you
look sick with the bat, by the way, too.
If you preferred starting Ramon Arias over Kobe Mayo to begin with, you're really going to pinch hit Kobe Mayo for Colton Cowser in that spot? I'm sorry. I just can't excuse that one. Again, Holiday, Austin Slater for Holiday, I can live with that one. I get it. Didn't necessarily like it in that spot, but I get it. Pinch hitting for Cowser there, but going back to the big picture question here, in the Orioles lineup, think about it. Who has been platoon proof in terms of not being pinch hit for late in games, depending on the lefty-righty matchup? Gunnar Henderson doesn't get pinch hit for. Jordan Westburg this year has not gotten pinch hit for yet. Last year, he platooned with Adam Frazier, so we saw it with him. Santander and Rutschman are switch hitters, so you don't have that issue. But we've seen Mountcastle be hit for. We've seen Ryan O'Hearn be hit for. So we've seen this. Again, is that all a Brandon Hyde thing? No, it's not. This perception that Mike Elias and Sig Mejdal are sitting up in, where the front office sits during a game, and they're just saying, "Oh no, Brandon, he's doing the righty-lefty thing again." No, it's an organizational thing. That's why they acquired.
Well, it's predetermined at 2 o'clock that Mayo's going to bat in that situation if it's a left-hander.
Yes and no. I think that's a situation where you got to open your eyes a little bit and look at reality, right? Again, we're talking about someone who doesn't even have a major league hit. This isn't this. If Eloy Jimenez was coming off the bench to hit for Colton Cowser there, I still don't like it, but at least there's someone with a track record of major league success, albeit not this year, but at least that makes sense and is grounded in a track record.
Well, you're starting to say you're feeling differently about Cowser against left-handed pitching then, is what you're saying. You feel differently about that.
In general, recently, yes, but Kobe Mayo doesn't have a major league hit, Nestor. You hit right-handed. Does that mean you should pinch hit for Colton Cowser? I hit right-handed. Does that mean I should pinch hit for Colton Cowser? Of course not. If we're just going to be so married to the lefty-righty thing, then truly you can just have a computer manage a team.
Well,
right?
They are analytically based. They do manage by whatever,
but there still has to be some
their
reason.
excuse would be this morning. They have a reason on paper that you don't know about. I don't know about. I don't know about it. I'm not allowed to ask them questions. But there is a reason. There was a rationale for it, other than just righty lefty. I'm sure that involved Cowser in the pitcher. I would think that they're thinking about it more than I would on a Stratomatic and say it's righty lefty. Let's just go with it.
I'm not sure there is.
Okay.
In that spot, because Kobe Mayo doesn't have any production, right? And okay, Jacob.
Well,
Calvin,
I can see Brandon Hyde say, "Well, we're trying to get him started." You know, I mean that's
then start him. You don't pinch hit him in a huge spot in the 8th inning, then play him. I mean, like,
well, you're down 3 runs and you're looking
not yelling,
for a home run there, and you're lefty righty. You know,
and let me be clear. I'm not yelling at you.
I love when you're
actually trying to
yell at me all you want.
No, but I'm just saying none of that made sense.
I'm not trying to be a jerk caller. I'm just trying to listen. I'm trying to take their side of view, the point of view. So you're not killing them this morning. Lord knows I don't know Mike Weiss. I've never met Brandon Hyde. I can say whatever I want about him.
Right.
I looked at it, and when Mayo came to the plate, I acknowledged that they were pinch hitting a left-hander for a left-hander, which is baseball, right? That's baseball 101. That's the way the gods draw it up to go righty-lefty. Right. And I would agree with that. But when I saw him come up, I thought, well, they're looking for him to get a hold of one the way he did 30 times in 200 plate appearances in Norfolk or whatever, and just put the ball up in the air and let him see if he can crush one, see if he can get a hold of one. And I that's how I felt. Then I saw the at-bat, and I saw what he's swinging at, what he's not swinging at. That sort of look of, oh, shit, I'm overwhelmed here. I'm striking out 50% of my time. As he walked back to the dugout, I saw the whites of his eyes on the MASN broadcast, and I thought, what you're thinking right now, that probably was a mistake. When Brandon Hyde saw him walking back to the dugout, Brandon Hyde probably looked over at Cowser and thought, well, Cowser might have only hit a double down the line, but the inning would be alive, or if he struck out, I wouldn't. Yeah. If he struck out about it, I could say, well, I'm not batting a kid that doesn't have a hit. You know, that's what he could say to you.
Yeah. Right. And that's where I just look at this and I can't fathom that they did that. I mean, again, Holiday.
In the moment, I wasn't outraged. I swear. I mean, you're more outraged the day after. And I get it.
I was in the middle of, full disclosure, I had the game on. I was working on some writing. I was working on my 12 Ravens thoughts from training camp earlier in the day. I actually thought initially, and again, I was kind of half listening, half watching, and trying to get some writing done because I wanted to get to bed at a decent hour. But I actually had thought that they hit Mayo for Arias at first. And when I looked up and I kind of saw that he hit for Cowser, like it's one of those things that I didn't process it at first because it was so nonsensical in my mind to do that in that spot beyond the lefty-righty thing. Because of what you just said, Kobe Mayo, he scuffled in his first few games, and that doesn't mean that he's. I glue him.
Don't have him strike out and walk back to the dugout
feeling
worse than he feels. Right. Yeah.
I mean, if you're trying to get him going, then just play him for Arias. Like start him. Like continue to run him out there and start him right off the bat. Anyway, Jacob Calvin-Meyer, the son, put the splits out as last night's game was. I think it was as it was concluding. Would have been right after. But so Genesis Cabrera, the left-handed reliever for Toronto, who was out there in the 8th inning, his splits in 2024. Right-handed batters, a 778 OPS. Left-handed batters, an 817 OPS. It's pretty platoon neutral there.
Right.
Colton Cowser splits in 2024 against right-handed pitching, an 820 OPS. Against left-handed pitching, a 719 OPS. Now, better against right-handed pitching. Is 719 so prohibitive? Especially when you look at how he's done over the last month or so against left-handed pitching. That's not an extreme there. And again, then you look at Kobe Mayo, and we're going to use his numbers from the minors, Nestor. Against right-handed pitching, a 1048 OPS. Against left-handed pitching, a 776 OPS. I hear what you're saying, and I generally would agree with you. And that's why I said Austin Slater's career numbers against lefties and understanding Jackson Holiday is still an infant as it pertains to Major League Baseball. I didn't love it, but I get it at least. I didn't get this because to me, the whole rationale that you pinch hit for Jackson Holiday with a vet is the same rationale you use for not bringing Kobe Mayo off the bench to hit for Cowser, who is also a rookie, but obviously has almost a full season now under his belt of major league at bats. So I did not get that. I did not get that at all. And I still don't get it the morning after. I won't get it 3 days from now. And I'm a Kobe Mayo guy. I'm not down on Kobe Mayo.
Well, you're down on them after losing by 3 runs in a game where they stunk and the pitcher went out and the relief pitching was awful and all that.
Sure.
You're looking for a 3-run home run from whomever there, or at least a double down the line to get back in the game. And none of that happened. And
sure. Well, and part of the issue was they had 1 hit until that inning.
They had
Jackson
3 hits all night. Yeah.
So
they deserved to lose, no matter who was batting.
Of course they did. Of course they did. I mean, Albert Suarez was, and Jackson Holiday hitting another home run.
He spent 15 minutes going through 1 at bat, and Cowser could have struck out 2.
He could have, but I can't ignore bad process. That was really bad process there. And there are plenty of times where I defend their process, and they love the platoon advantage. They absolutely do. But that was a situation where you can't see the forest for the trees. Like, take a step back and think about what you're doing here, Brandon. And that I can't excuse that. I can't condone that whatsoever. Like I said, I could live with the first decision. Didn't love it, but accept it. That was over-managing, overthinking. I don't even want to say overthinking because I don't know if there was a lot of thinking involved there other than just righty-lefty blind, because again, Kobe Mayo's still looking for his first major league hit. That was one that
all right, well, I'm gonna get Luke a towel. I'm gonna towel him off. They're going to play some more games in Toronto. They're going to play some games in Tampa this weekend. All of our coverage up at Baltimore Positive. We're going to be doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour on the 23rd when the Cheatstros come to town. On Friday the 23rd, we'll be at Faithley's. We'll have the Maryland Lottery scratch-offs to give away the Gold Rush 7s doublers. Our friends at Liberty Pure Solutions keeping our water crystal clear, as well as Jiffy Lube Multi-Care, getting Luke out to Owings Mills this week, and then down to the ballpark on Friday night as the Eagles fans come in. We had the Phillies fans 2 months ago. Now the Eagles fans coming in here. I'm sure they'll be more drunk on Friday night because let's be honest, there's not much more to do at preseason games on Friday night. Luke is around all week. You can find him at Baltimore Luke. Plenty of Orioles information up at Baltimore Positive right now, and plenty on the offensive line. John Feinstein joined us this week. I've had so many great guests around here. If you were around last week, you saw all the stuff we did with Sportico and the ownership part. John Eisenberg did an hour with me of the history of Orioles baseball and peeled back some of the bird tapes. John Miller, the author of the Earl Weaver book, is coming on soon. Joe Poiley, who wrote the book on Tom Maddie, who's based down in the Tampa area, is going to come on a little later on in the week as well, talking about Tom Maddie as well as other things. So it's summer around here. They do play 6 nights a week, at least 7 nights sometimes. So they'll get back after it in Toronto. For all my friends up in Toronto, enjoy yourself up there. Have a good time. Enjoy the cleanliness of Canadian culture. He's Luke. I'm Nestor. We're going to talk some football. Back for more on WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, where we never stop talking Baltimore Positive.